Welcome to today's episode of the Heaven and Elle podcast. As always, I'm your host, Elle Edwards, founder of the Itchy Soul Playground and Yuya. Whether this is your first time joining us, and if it is, welcome, or whether you've been here lots, just know that I'm really delighted to be here with you and to share today's episode. So today's episode is about life being a mixed bag, and it's quite, I love the way that life works out. So those of you who follow along every week will know that this was the episode that was meant to go out yesterday. But then I had a dream and we had a different episode. The funny thing is, there's an extra nuance to what we're about to explore, which we wouldn't have had if we'd have recorded this episode yesterday, because it's as a result of a conversation literally about half an hour ago with Acelia. The Holy Spirit went ding, 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 and connected some extra pieces to this. It always fascinates me the way that life kind of fits together, and we really can't. Therefore, the onus is on us not to overthink life and try and have all the pieces fit together, because when we do that, if stuff is too rigid and fixed, we don't allow for that flow and for the delightful things that God can bring into the day, which is not what this episode is about, but it's like a quick aside reminder to self, but sharing it with you out loud in case it's helpful to you too, because God does really see the big picture, and when things like that happen, it reminds me, I'm like, oh wow, you really do know what you're doing. So with that said, life is a mixed bag. What do we do? Because yes, at the time of recording, we are still globally, there is the pandemic, and I think it might have been downgraded recently to an epidemic. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. But as I said to a lady a couple of weeks ago when I was recording an episode of the podcast as a guest, if it wasn't COVID, it would be something else. Throughout life, there are always things coming at you, stuff happening. And yes, okay, with COVID, it happened on a global platform. It's happened and happening for the whole, the whole world. There is no part of the world, even the bits of the world that like to pretend they haven't had COVID. I'm not going to name countries there, that would be silly. But, even parts of the world where they say they've had no COVID, that's probably not true. So yes, this is a playing out on a large scale of stuff happening. But even when there's not COVID, life is a mixed bag. You can reflect back on probably any year and go, there were some lovely things in that year and there were some really challenging things. How do we navigate that? How do we navigate that with love and grace and joy? With that reminder, so the one piece of this I want to remind you from the get-go is that anybody who tells you they are happy or joyful all of the time is lying to themselves, or they're lying to you. And I'm not within the context of this episode, there isn't enough space to dig into the difference between joy and happiness, except to say, I know that in Christian circles, people love to celebrate joy and they look on happiness as this frivolous thing. If you go through and actually look at the use of the word joy and happy and the different, like happy, happiness, joy, joyous, they can be used in the same example. So from a biblical perspective, happiness, joy, delight, they are all the same thing. So when we're talking about, God-given happiness, God-given joy, God-given delight, it's the same thing. So don't get hung up on the semantics of that. And yes, we can, even when things are feeling difficult, even when we're going through a challenging time, because you are walking this out with God and you can keep talking to him about stuff, you can have that inner peace and contentment and joy, which is completely different to this like, yay, I'm so happy, everything's amazing. Do you see the difference between those two? And so the real, I guess I've already answered one piece of this. So when life is challenging, not even just challenging, when it feels uncertain, when there's just bits and things coming at you, when you step into things and you're just not sure, the reminder, as always, is you don't have to play on your own. Yes, you can have community of other people. I love doing community, you know that. I'm a big advocate for community. But you are also already in community right there, wherever you are right now, enjoying this episode. You are in a community because you have Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and you. You can talk to Holy Spirit about this and ask him to help you see that, whatever that thing is that's come up from his perspective. Ask him to help you see the joy or the delight in that moment. And when it's really difficult stuff, allow yourself just to be with him and go, do you know what? This is really rough right now. Help me, and it's not as if like he's going to magically make everything better, like my example is often when Charlie the dog died back in January. It was horrible. And those of you who've had dogs and lost dogs, you'll know that we'd never lost a dog before. It was genuinely traumatic for us as a family. And I say that with a smile on my face because I understand they're animals. It's different to losing a person. But it was one of the most traumatic experiences. I guess you could say that makes us very fortunate because we haven't lost an awful lot of family members. But it was one of the most traumatic starts to the year. It was awful. And so if someone had said to me in that moment, well, just give it to God, it'll be okay. No, you still have to feel those feelings. And so there is a mixture to this because yes, I am here as your advocate for joy and for helping you see the silver linings and move through stuff. Always doing it, talking to God about stuff and sharing what's on your heart. But a big, really important part of that is actually you do need to feel those feelings. And when stuff is just difficult and traumatic and it's really hard, you can talk to God about that stuff too, and he can be there holding you. As you'll see in today's Holy Spirit love note in the playground, what he reminded me yesterday is to take a deep breath in and take a breath out. I am closer than the air that you breathe. He is with you and for you always. So there is no magic solution to this. But the extra piece of this, which Celia and I unpacked a little bit, and it came about as a result of a conversation I had last night, is that some of us, not everybody, but some of us are not wired the same way as what's conventionally normal. Some of you, I've often joked about the fact that my mind is a little bit all over the place. Neurodiverse, my brain does not connect all the pieces in the way that is supposedly normal. I think normal is just a setting on the washing machine. I would argue that nobody is normal. But for those of us who sometimes feel like we have so much going on inside our minds. I actually had a message that someone said, I wanted some help with something. I know you're busy. My immediate thought was, when is my mind not busy? It's just the way that life is. However, the reminder that I had and this piece that came out as a result of this conversation with Celia was actually we can embrace that. And so when stuff feels all over the place, when it's a little bit jiggly jaggly and higgledy piggledy and loads of other made up words, that actually can help make life fun. So some of us get bored very easily. So if it's same old all of the time, one day after another, always the same, I would be like, oh no, this is really boring. I don't want to do this anymore. For some of us, the shiny stuff, the new, it's exciting, it's joyous, it's delightful. What if it's time to embrace that as part of the adventure? Walking this out moment by moment, day by day with Holy Spirit. Okay, what are we going to do today? What are you saying today? What's on your heart now? What does this look like? It means that every single day can have that sense of fun and adventure. And yes, you're going to deal with hard stuff along the way. I'm not suggesting you're not. But if your default position is, okay, God, what are we doing today? And approaching the day from a place of adventure and fun and delight, that changes the story that you tell yourself about that day. And I know that's semantics, but your mind is incredibly wired. And the way that your mind is wired, those stories and the stories that you tell yourself about the day make a difference. And so I would encourage you, if any of that resonates with you, I would encourage you, grab your notebook. Remember I've shared with you before, writing stuff down with God was that when he started this exercise with me last year, was the first time he got this crazy mind to be still. And so if you find it hard to be still, I would encourage you, get a notebook, get a pen, write down, okay, Holy Spirit, what's on your heart right now? What are you saying about this? And then write down what you hear. Everybody has their own ways of having those conversations and interacting with God. But if you're not sure what that looks like for you, it's I offer to you as a really fun starting point. Give it a go and see what comes up. And I say that and acknowledging, this is not one size fits all. This is about allowing you to explore and experiment. And with that said, we're going to draw this episode to a close. You can probably hear, this is one of the joys of recording the podcast live, is that when the dog decides to get up, we all know about it. But it's a reminder that this is about doing real life out loud. And so things are going to happen and you've got a choice in that moment. We can either go, oops, oh dear, stop and just shrink back. Or we can embrace it and go, well, it is what it is. At the end of the day, the dog is barking because she is telling my husband, you're awake and I want a biscuit. That is what she's telling him because she's trained him really well. We can choose how we focus on these things and the stories we tell ourselves about this. So just be encouraged, whether today has started off well or not. How the day starts does not have to dictate the end. Ask Holy Spirit, What are you saying right now?